Someone bends down to pick up a pencil. Nothing dramatic. And then their back locks. A sharp jolt of pain from a movement they've done 1,000 times before. A dog does the same motion 20 times a day, chasing nothing more than a ball, and its spine never protests. The difference isn't strength, it's architecture. To understand why, you have to look at the spine not as a bone, but as a structure carrying weight. In a dog or a cat or almost any four-legged mammal, the spine runs roughly horizontal, like a beam stretched between two sets of legs. Weight hangs from it. Muscles and connective tissue act like cables under a bridge, distributing the load evenly along the length of the body. It's an efficient system, built for creatures that move on all fours. Then look at a human. At some point in our evolutionary history, our ancestors stood up, not gradually adjusting posture for a moment, but permanently reorganizing the entire skeleton around a vertical line. The spine that once ran horizontal, like that beam, rotated 90 degrees. Now it has to stack directly on top of the pelvis, supporting the full weight of the head, chest, and arms straight down, one vertebra balanced on the next, all the way to the ground. To make that possible, the human lower spine developed a distinct inward curve just above the pelvis. This curve is called lumbar lordosis, and it's one of the clearest signatures of a body built to walk upright. It shifts the trunk's center of gravity back over the hips, so we don't tip forward with every step. Without it, walking on two legs the way we do would be almost impossible. But that curve comes with a hidden cost. In a horizontal spine, the load runs mostly along the length of the beam. In a curved vertical spine, the geometry changes. At the base of the lumbar curve where the last vertebra meets the pelvis, the forces aren't just pressing straight down anymore. Part of that load now pushes sideways, creating what biomechanists call shear force, a sliding stress trying to push one vertebra forward relative to the one below it. That single junction, called L5-S1, absorbs more of this sliding stress than almost any other point in the human skeleton. A dog's spine deals with a different problem. Because it runs horizontal, quadruped spines are loaded, mostly by compression along their length, and research on canine vertebrae shows they're built with notably higher bone density than human vertebrae. A structural response to sustaining that higher, more even compressive stress. It's a different design solving a different mechanical challenge, not simply a stronger version of the same one. Humans compensate for the shear problem with soft tissue. A layer of connective tissue called the thoracolumbar fascia wraps around the lower back, linking the spine, pelvis, and leg muscles into a single tension network. It isn't just passive wrapping. It contains muscle-like cells capable of generating active tension, helping stabilize the spine as the body moves. Combined with the deep postural muscles running along the vertebrae, this fascia acts like a set of internal guy wires, constantly working to keep the lumbar curve from collapsing under shear stress. A dog doesn't need an equivalent system working this hard, because its spine was never asking gravity to fight sideways in the same way. This is where the story gets more interesting than humans have bad backs. Researchers comparing human lumbar vertebrae to those of great apes have found that people with certain spinal conditions, like a stress fracture called spondylolysis, tend to have vertebrae with more exaggerated versions of the very traits that make upright walking efficient. In other words, the same bone shape that makes bipedal walking work well can, past a certain point, become the shape most likely to fail. It's not a flaw bolted onto an otherwise perfect design. It's a trade-off built into the same feature. There's also real scientific debate about how much of modern back pain traces to this ancient architecture at all. Some researchers argue the human spine's adaptation to upright walking is fundamentally sound, and that today's back pain has more to do with modern lifestyle, extended sitting, reduced movement, and a body living decades longer than the ones our early ancestors evolved. Both explanations likely play a role, and any honest account of back pain has to hold that uncertainty rather than pick one dramatic cause. So why take the risk at all? Standing upright freed the hands entirely from locomotion, letting them carry, throw, and eventually build tools. It raised the eyes higher for a wider field of view. And walking efficiently on two legs over long distances on flat feet with straight knees uses less energy than a chimpanzee's version of upright walking, which is closer to a partial, less efficient crouch. Evolution didn't calculate this trade beforehand. It simply preserved a body plan that worked well enough for creatures who spent long days walking upright across open, changing landscapes, even though that same plan left one small joint absorbing forces no four-legged ancestor ever had to manage. Which brings us back to that person bending down for a pencil. What looks, in that instant, like a design failure, is really the visible edge of a structural compromise millions of years old. Every step on two legs is proof the trade worked. Every twinge in the lower back is proof of what it cost.